Thank you very much for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast. And today I have a guest who has decades of experience scaling businesses to advise CEOs and business leaders across the country. Businesses seek his knowledge for COOs and CFO level insight to identify pathways to growth and profitability. And today we're going to talk about one space of business being nonprofits. That is a love of mine, coaching Little League, and I sit on some other boards, but I need his expertise to help me help them get to another level. We'll be right back.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Again, I thank you very much for tuning in. I have none other than the Mike Straza. Mike, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, Maurice. I appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. So, Mike, we were talking in the green room and we were trying to understand this climate right now that we're in, and we want to talk specifically to nonprofits today, but it's across the board. But we're focusing on a little bit on nonprofits. So how, if I'm running a nonprofit, I sit on the board and all that type of stuff, how would I grow in a climate or a culture that feels like very dim right now? How can I grow?
Yeah, that's definitely been a topic, I think, for a while, but it definitely in the current climate that we're in, there's a lot of concern about how do they operate on a regular basis? What
Hmm.
does that look like? And a lot of what's happened is you kind of go back, some basic things is first to understand what is your relationships you have with your nonprofit? What is your mission, your vision? Have you been looking at that, your strategic plan, and what that entails to making sure that you've been staying up on it and you've
Hmm.
been really people know in your community and outside your community that what you stand for, what your mission is, why is it important to be part of this organization. And I think
Mm.
that is something that people had to look at again, or they've been building on that for a while, and this is a perfect time to knowing that the uncertainty of where your funding's coming from, especially if you are federally funded or it's a pass through or other types of things that people are like
Mm.
a little nervous about how they're going to continue, because there's some really great organizations out there that
Hmm.
are having to step back and try to figure out how are they going to accomplish their mission.
So here's something that you pointed out from the very beginning that I think a lot of organizations, this is where we're saying, even though we're talking about nonprofits, but it's across the board. Are we taking a hard look at our mission, our vision, and value statements? And are we living up to that level? So it's almost we getting back to basics almost, right? Yeah.
It is. It's almost basics. It's basically re-looking at it, and this is happens for profit and nonprofit. Is really looking at what is your why? Why are you doing what you do?
Hmm.
Why is your company? Why is your organization doing what they're doing? Why are you helping one group over another, or what is your purpose?
Hmm.
And trying to understand that and making sure that not just you, as let's say you're the CEO or a C-suite person, but also to
Hmm.
the people in your organization that's saying, do they know? I mean, everyone goes
You're
to work
right.
every day, everyone's been involved, but it's like, can you sit down and go, next to the next office next to you and say, hey, do you know why we're here? What
Hmm.
is our mission? Why do you believe in what we do? And making sure it all aligns, because time
Mm.
goes by and people maybe come and go and you don't know, does everyone really align to what the purpose of your organization is?
So why would I need to worry about people aligning if we were growing, if we were making millions of dollars, Mike? Like, I'm just bringing in them for their skill set, so why should they align with my mission or my vision?
I think that also what happens is when times get tough, when budgets get a little tighter, or there's uncertainty about where the organization's going or their job or anything like that, is like people you will try to see how they react when
Hmm.
when we're under stress, when an organization is under stress or individuals are under stress. We all act differently. We think
Hmm.
differently, and we're trying to. It's more of a fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to survive. So when you're in survival mode, you think differently and not necessarily couldn't be making not the best decisions
Mm-hmm.
for yourself or for the organization. So then you're a little clouded to where you need to go. So I think
Mm-hmm.
rallying everyone together and trying to say, okay, here's where we're at, here's where we're going, and making sure everyone is on the same page because there are some uncertain times and we need to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we're all going the same direction.
And so in that, I wonder, and just in the same space that you're in, there's a my experience has been there's a lot of companies who unfortunately misses a step in their business culture, which is the feedback loop.
Mhm.
And I think that's one thing that people, as we're looking at our mission, our vision, we can continue to reevaluate that statement and how we moving the company forward. What is our culture? Ultimately, our clients, both internal and external clients slash customers. So how important have you or what's the importance that you find that feedback loop for each and every one of these organizations so they can move forward?
A lot of that, yeah, with the feedback loop is sometimes when we're busy, things are going well, money's coming in, clients seem happy, everything's just kind of flowing. You really don't have that check in of saying, "Hey, are we doing what we intended to do? Are
Hmm.
is our customers really liking, or are they just in a mode where like there's a transaction, there's something going on, and they're just like, yeah, we're good." And
Hmm.
then all of a sudden something changes, and all of a sudden you find out it's like, oh no, they're not really been happy with what we've been doing.
Hmm.
And the same thing goes with your employees or people that work for you. They're like, I thought things were good. I
Right.
thought, everyone was working together. We're all rowing the same direction. And
Right.
all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait a minute. No, things aren't as good as we thought. We were too busy focused on other things,
Mhm.
funding or just some other part of the process. And we didn't come back and check in and saying, hey, how is the health? What does our health look like? It's kind of
Mhm.
like a report. You have your report card and you're saying, okay, what
Right.
does that look like? And it's like, yeah, you're not doing well. You need to, you need
Right.
to go,
Right.
your check engine light's on. So you better go find out what's going on. So yeah.
And I'm bringing up that idea because that is how we get our information from our community, right?
Mhm.
And so now that I'm revisiting my mission statement and all, kind of going back to basics, and now I'm concerned about because I've relied so heavily on funding federally or even statewide, right? Because even the states and local governments might have to pull back a little bit as well, and also those private entities
Mhm.
that we might have been getting funding from, but now we got to rely on our literal next door neighbor to help
Mhm.
us. So how do I kind of get back to that grassroots space as a nonprofit to understand, hey, this is the community I'm supposed to be serving. This is how I need to really effectively help them, and they can help me in the same time.
Yeah, a lot of that is you look at as first the organization is understand your why. Why are you there? What's the purpose, your mission and vision? Then educating your board because your board members need to
Mm.
know too, because you brought them on because they have an expertise in a certain area, but also too, they should have connections into outside the
Hmm.
community and beyond because they need to be connected. And it's like someone asks you, why are you on this board? And
Hmm.
they better have a good answer. Like, this is why I believe in the mission. I believe in the vision. But if they're like, I'm just on a board because I'm filling a space because I wanted,
Hmm.
everyone said it was a fun board to be on. That's not a good enough reason.
Hmm.
So you have all of that, but then you have to then say, then how do you educate your internal processes, your board, and externally about how do you been communicating? What is your marketing? What does your development team look like? How do they
Mm.
communicate to outside of to the people out there that is like, hey, why would they be interested in doing this, or why would they want to invest in your organization? And hopefully, your communications, your development team has developed these, segments where they're like, okay, we reach out to this group on this, we reach out to this group, and you kind of have a pattern of understanding how you develop your donors, and that's something you have
Mm.
to do. Is it's not just saying, hey, give me money. It's developing a mindset of like, have I educated people about who we are? I mean, there's
Mm.
organizations that have been around for, a couple years to over 100 and some years. And you
Right.
ask somebody in your community, like, hey, have you heard of this organization? They've been around for 130 years. And they're like, never heard of it. I'm like, what?
Mm.
How is this possible? It's
Right.
like, I mean, I understand if you're on a very large city for millions of people,
Right.
but if it's an organization that's been making such impact, there should be more understanding of what they stand for and why. And then
Mm.
it's like, I want to be part of that. And that's the thing is like, how do you get people to know that this is out there? And then how can they be so excited to be part of the mission to further this on, to make it go another 10 years, another 50 years, another
Mm.
100 years? And I think that's where it is the communication. We always talk about communication
Mhm.
internally, how sometimes like what falls apart is communication. It's
Most
like
definitely.
most of the time. And I've learned that from all the years I've been from school when I was a kid
Right.
to now. It's just like, oh, it's always the word is communication. It's like, how
Mhm.
does it that the thing that always suffers? And then we carry that on in our own organizations or
Mhm.
our jobs. And it's like, it's so key to just the success is just communicating where you're at and where you need to go and getting
Hmm.
people behind you.
How can I do that effectively though? If I didn't learn it in grade school, I didn't learn it in high school, I didn't learn it with my 3 degrees, like,
Yeah.
so so how can I become a better or more effective communicator if I haven't been able to I haven't had to do it up until now?
That's the thing is I look at it as kind of my experience. I always take some of the things I've done over the years, and one of the things I do is I run. I'm a
Mm,
runner. I ran in high school, I ran in college, had a scholarship in college, and I've run a little bit beyond that. And
mhm.
over the years, as you get older, you're like, hey, how do I stay fit? Because when I was in my teenage years, like, it's easy to somewhat stay fit.
Right.
You move around a lot more than you do as an adult.
Right.
So it's the training and the focus of like, I gotta get
Mm,
up and I do this. I gotta do these things to keep my body in shape. Gotta run, gotta lift, gotta do
mhm,
these things, gotta eat better. And it's a constant thing that you have to just continue to repeat and knowing here are the things I need to accomplish what I want. So
mhm,
then in communication, I look at it as we've read a ton of books, we've watched a lot of videos on, how to
mhm,
communicate, but then it comes down to that person itself saying, I have to be wanting and willing to change
mhm,
to be able to communicate. And that's something that we all
mm.
individually have. That's something that's inside of us. We have to, and it's not a introvert versus extrovert thing. It is
Right.
just a choice, and it's tough because there's times you just want to like, I don't want to communicate.
Right.
But knowing that if you're so passionate about your mission, your vision of where you work, or you're the leader, you have to because like it's not going to happen on its own. People
Mhm,
are not going to find you on their own by saying, "Oh, let me see what's out there in this area, this
mhm,
sector." They need to know, so you have to always, talk about your successes, talk about who you are,
mhm.
what you're doing, why it's important for your community. And I think sometimes we forget.
Right.
So yeah, it's training. That's pretty much it is. It's daily training. When it's not nice out, you still have to go do the thing you have to do.
So 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 with that, all right, so you say you were a runner, right?
Yeah.
So did you run track for high school or college, or were you part of a team or you did it individually?
No, I was part of a team. So I was
Okay.
part of my high school team, and then I was recruited to be on a college team, a Division I college team,
Nice.
and was on a scholarship. And I love competition. I
Hmm.
love all the everything that goes with it, the team aspect of it, and it really taught me a lot about who I was
Hmm.
and what I wanted to change, what I wanted to do better,
Hmm.
and taking that to the business world and
Hmm.
how I use that, apply that same approach of just it just takes a lot of hard work. No matter if you're gifted and skilled in certain areas, it's still you still have to do the work. You have to continue to do the work. What comes naturally to some
Hmm.
might not to others, but even if it comes naturally to you, you still have to continue to learn and to be better because how
Hmm.
are you going to be better? How can you serve people if you don't try just as hard as they are?
And I brought that up because you're bringing up my point. You
Mm,
know, because now I didn't play, any sports in college. I played around with football in high
mm,
school. I coached football. And all of it develops communication,
mm,
develops teamwork,
mhm.
it develops trust, right? To a
Yeah,
degree, because minus golf, and even golf has a coach, but there's not too many sports where you're by yourself.
right.
Even though, yes, you might be running your lap, your leg, or whatever else individually, but it's
Mhm.
still a team thing, right?
It
So
is.
so how have you noticed stuff like that
Mhm.
really translate and be as effective as it could be in the business sector so we could understand, hey, now we can take this idea, again,
Mhm.
grassroots mentality, and now transform this organization because sometimes we forget our beginnings,
Mhm.
our natural beginnings to propel us forward.
Yeah. No, I look at it as, yeah, as a team aspect. You look at it as you in the business world, in any organization, is like you have to remember those times. You go back in your life and you say, okay, when was I part of a team? Yeah, there's part of it as an individual, it's a physical part, but
Mhm.
you're always there's going to be somebody that's better than you, someone that's not, someone's equal, whatever, and you're all trying to figure out how, as a leader, to pull people along to get them to the next level. I always
Right.
look at it as I'm always trying to, as I go in an organization and it's like, okay, there's some weaknesses here. What do
Hmm.
I need to do? I need to figure out some training for them. I'm going to say, okay, we're going to get you in these classes, or we're going to have you do this. It's never like, hey, you're doing awful, or you're not a good fit. It's like, how do we help you be better?
Hmm.
And let me give you the tools, because maybe you don't have the tools, and that's what a coach does. A coach kind of helps you find the tools to find that thing, and it's not just like you will be you could be a great athlete or a great fill in the blank. It's
Hmm.
just like, but there's things that need to be there, able to be able to make that happen. And I think
Hmm.
that's the goal: is how do we bring each other along? Because I might get tired, and someone else can say, "Hey, I'm ready. I'm refreshed. I've learned this. Let's go." And then they pull you along. So the whole team is constantly in a rhythm to where it's like not everyone's going to have their best game, their best. They're not going to be
Hmm.
on their A game every day. So then someone else comes off the bench or whatever and say,
Right.
"Hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to lead." And I think that is just that mentality. Is you have to instill that in people, saying, we're all our leaders. We all
Hmm.
are going to have times where it's time for us to step up, and I think that's where I try to encourage people. It's your turn to step up, and I think you have the tools. It's okay. It's a little scary at times, but
Yeah. Right.
it's time to go.
Right. Right. So as a leader, sometimes our ego gets in the way.
Hmm.
And sometimes we can't be honest enough to say, yo, dude, I'm tired. I
Yeah,
need a breather, right?
yeah,
So how would you encourage someone to take that moment? So I need a breather, man. Mike, I need a breather, man. Like, can you
yeah.
can you take this for a moment? Whatever it is. So how would you talk to someone to tone down the ego, turn
Mhm.
down the attitude, and trust the next person that they will do at least a good enough job to get to the next space. So how
Yeah,
would you do that?
yeah. That's a tough one, because all of our egos, we all have one. It's just
Right.
a matter of how much it shows itself or not. And that's always the thing, is knowing that there's not something that's like, great, you spent X, I worked 80 hours, I worked 100 hours, I worked whatever.
Mhm.
It's like, you can only do that for so long. No one at the end of the day is going to really be like, wow, look what you did. It's like
Mhm.
you're killing yourself to do something. And it's like, but you could have been more efficient and faster if you would have brought other
Mm.
people along in the journey. And that's the problem, where sometimes we think, well, I've been doing this all myself, so I don't need anybody. And it's like, yeah, but you probably, if you would have brought people in at certain times,
Mhm.
it wouldn't have been the load wouldn't have been so heavy. And then also too, there wouldn't be burnout, or just you're missing things. There's just no
Mm.
way people can you're going to miss things. So by empowering people to do more, or be part of the solution, or trying to figure something out at the beginning of it, is going to be so much more helpful. And then we kind of go back to what we talked at the very beginning here,
Mhm.
is we're going through some hard times. It's like we have to make sure our training is up. We have to make sure the people are ready to go, and giving people opportunity to say, hey, I know I can do this. And it's like,
Mhm.
great, I trust you. I need your help to take to the next thing. But
Mhm.
again, like you said, ego, oh my gosh, it's a horrible thing. And it's like, people's like, but it powers you. Look at all the things you've done. I'm like, yeah, but also look at all that. You don't see all the other stuff that
Right.
it's a mess, because
Right.
this is looking so great, and everything else behind me is, collateral damage.
Right.
So,
So there's some key points that I want people to understand. We had to put it in one word versions, right? We
mm,
talked about the importance of communication, trust,
yeah.
being humble, right?
Yes.
And so what's one more thing that you would suggest for our listeners to move their organization forward?
I think, I think, the trust, the humbleness, it kind of fits with all those. It's just,
Mhm.
don't be afraid to fail.
Mm.
And that's something that I look at as we're always trying to manage everything. And it's like, the failure isn't necessarily what you're thinking it is. It's just, sometimes it's like taking a risk, taking a chance, but knowing, explaining why you're moving this direction. It's like, sometimes I think we get cautious, like, well, we never done it this way, and we've always done it this way.
Mhm.
If I do it differently and it doesn't work, I'm gonna look really bad.
Mhm.
And it's like, get beyond that. It's like, again, if you are a team minded person, or the person who's leading you, or you're
Mhm.
leading them, knowing that it's like, hey, we're going to do this together, and I want to try this and see if this works. I want to see if, because what it ultimately you're trying to say is, I'm trying to do this because it's going to be better for the organization,
Mhm.
not better for me.
Mhm.
There might be some residual things you get out of it, meaning whatever, people, you get, promoted, you
Mhm.
get, people say, good job. But again, it's more of, am I trying to make the organization succeed? Am I trying to help the people that we have been, hired to help? We're a nonprofit organization, and we're out there and we're doing this social thing, or we're doing something that's basically moving something forward. Am I doing that? And it's okay to say, I'm taking a risk, and everyone's with me, and we're going to try this out. And I think that's where sometimes we get stuck in a repetitive thing, that we've been doing this forever at this nonprofit, and
Mhm.
we've always done it this way. And sometimes we got to break the pattern and see what else is possible. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes we miss out on what is possible because we stay where it's safe. And I think that sometimes we have to
Mm.
get out of that zone at times.
But the problem is that you only hear about the winners, right? You only hear the ones that's coming in number one, and so no one wants to be the first loser. Right?
It's Stories are great to tell when there's a great success story. No one talks about all the failures and all the things that happened in the past, but all of a sudden you hear the success. You've seen organizations, you've seen athletes, you've seen all those things where they're talking about all the time they spent,
Mhm.
on the basketball court or wherever,
Right.
and they're like, but all those times, the missed shots, the failures of a business and things like that. But then at the end of the day, you're like, well, look, I mean, I want to be like that person. It's like, well, you didn't see all the things that they had
Right.
to go through, and hopefully they had someone and some multiple people helping them get to the success they are. And I think that's the thing is, it's
Mm.
like, yeah, there's always a great, I want to always have the success story, but also too, there's some hard times. And that's where I come in too, is
Right.
helping people, saying, hey, here's some things. Being an entrepreneur, being a business owner,
Mhm.
being a leader in a nonprofit, it is amazing. You do amazing work and you're doing some amazing things, but then
Mhm.
here's the things that come with it that are not as exciting. Nobody wants to
Right.
write about. So, yeah.
But I think one of the things we do miss in that is that you're still a winner as long as you don't quit.
Right.
You're still winning because unfortunately we don't take our lessons as wins.
No.
All those failures, all those missed shots,
Mhm.
every time I'm running, I trip and fall
Yep.
and roll over 18 times. There's a message in there. Pick up your feet,
Yep.
those type
Yeah.
of things,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes we miss that we're still winning in that situation that's gonna make us better for the next time around.
Because you always learn. I mean, I've always learned from my mistakes. I hopefully sometimes I repeat some of them,
Right.
just because I'm stubborn. But again, when I get knocked down, I've fallen down, things have happened. It's just like, I'm stubborn enough to where it's like, I have to get back up. I have
Mhm.
to figure this out, and then feel okay to tell people, I don't know how to figure this out. Can you help me?
Right.
But again, yeah, you need to. That's always the thing is, I'm not willing to give up, and
Mhm.
that's where you have to find, when you're seen in your organization, you see people that are like looking like you're going to give up or whatever. It's like, you got to help them. Don't
Mhm.
push them away. Don't
Mhm.
say things to them that would discourage them. It's like, hey, we're doing this together, and let me help you, or let me find someone that can. But yeah, that's where people lose hope,
Yeah.
get discouraged, and you have to lift them back up, and that's the goal.
So, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, and for those of us that are out there who are struggling, that needs a little word, that's
Mhm.
uplifting or some type of encouragement. that, it's okay being the first loser or whatever, however, however we may word it,
Right.
because unfortunately we talk down upon ourselves.
Mhm.
You get what I mean? We talk bad about ourselves. Like everybody else can say what what's going on, but it's our self talk, our self speech that brings us down even further. So for
Mhm.
someone like yourself, who's the encouraging person that's
Mhm.
going to willing to uplift anybody, whether you're first or last, where
Mhm.
can they reach out to you, Mike, and find your information
Mhm.
and get some of that positivity?
Yeah. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, of course. Just you look under Michael Straza. It'll be out there. And then Straza Consulting or consultstraza.com is my website. And there's a contact spot in there. You can fill out some information about where you're at, what you're looking to do, where you're trying to get your organization or individually you're trying to move forward. And that's how I reach out. And yeah, I'm always, like I said, I'm always on LinkedIn and always trying to see what I can do and just learn from people. That's the thing, is we're always learning, and it's just it's encouraging to know that there are people out there that are wanting to learn too. So
Right. Oh, no, man. Listen, man, I appreciate you coming on, man.
yeah.
I
Well,
really
thank you for
do.
having me.
Sure, no problem. But I do have one more question though before I let you
Sure.
go. It's my would you rather question. So, Mike, would you rather choose three doors or a fork in the road?
Ooh. I don't know. Depends on which one it is. I like them both. I like challenges. The fork in the road is, I assume you might know which each of them provide you. The three
Mhm.
doors is the more mystery. Um, I think because I just like sometimes surprises and challenges. I take the three doors and see what happens.
Now, I'm gonna give you another caveat to this
Okay.
because what I did not say, there were no barriers with whatever one you chose, right? So
Mhm.
now if I open up that box a little bit wider
Yeah.
and ask you the same question, would you still
Yeah.
have the same answer?
No barriers. Like there's not like nothing bad behind all the choices.
Yes, whatever your imagination desire, so there's no barriers to either one of those choices. Does that change your answer?
No, I think with
Okay.
the three doors, I think it is. It's if it's a fork in a road, and it's a fork of two, one this way, one this way. Three gives me another one. I was like, what's the mystery one?
Right,
Because
right.
maybe the other two are the same, but the third one is going to be like a really big surprise. And those are times it's like, oh, this will be. I think it would be fun to see what's behind the third door.
So here's the reason why I asked you that question. I
Mhm.
asked that guest. I asked everybody this question, right? And I had one guest who chose the three doors and said, "Well, all my doors are see through. They're acrylic.
Yeah.
I can see through them. So I already know what the answers are." So
Yeah,
that's what.
none of my doors are. I think all the years of my life, I don't think there's been some I would call see-through acrylic, and other ones have been surprises. And sometimes those have been great. Those have been more growth moments
Right.
of learning about myself and others. And those at times are like, wow, I wish that wasn't there. But then
Mm-hmm.
at the end of it, you do see like, okay, this had an importance in shaping of
Mm.
who I am and where I'm going. So
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. But I appreciate you coming on and sharing today, Mike.
yeah, well, thank you for having me on.
Sure, no problem, no problem. Of course, everyone, Mike's information will be in the show notes. So his LinkedIn, his website, all that stuff will be there. And thank you very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. And I will talk to you just a little later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chism on social media to stay connected and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?